So what's your questions?
Oh, do I need to bring a question?
I'd say so.
Well, we were talking about the Ottomans in the
Yes.
car on the way home
Yeah.
last week. We could do that, or I have a sillier question.
Okay.
I was thinking about braids.
Braids,
Yeah.
like the rope
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I don't
Or
know
like the
anything
hair
about
thing.
that.
Yeah. You suppose they're universal?
Yeah.
Was everybody braided their hair?
Everybody styled their hair crazy. Yeah.
It's just interesting to think of, like, because knots are sort of in a way a technology,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
to try and imagine that technology being independently developed in every place, maybe.
Fiber technology is universal. Like it's as old as stone tools, just about. And there's some hypotheses with early hominid type stuff where it's like, well, they probably wove big nets out of human hair, and probably the mighty hunter stereotype is probably more scavenging, like we talked about, following after big cats, and probably the most meat they ate was from like small animals that they flushed into nets on drives and stuff, rabbits and rodents and things like that.
Not marching through the jungle with a spear or...
Yeah, like you don't want to risk your men, folk. You know, like, oh, well, 8 of us went out and 6 came back, but we got a big mammoth. That's cool. You know, like it's incredibly dangerous to try to hunt megafauna with hand tools.
Well, so then what are you losing? Like that resource getting power in the future?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you're losing...
Yeah, I mean, if you're a society where 4 out of 5 kids are dead before 10 years old, maybe, a young, healthy man, 25 in his prime, no illnesses, is a very valuable asset that you don't want to lose to a rhino.
Right.
You know?
We don't need to be bold here.
Yeah, like we just need
to... don't be a hero. Sort of
please don't be a hero, please. You know, like I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did it at specific times or like locales, like buffalo jumps, where you drove them off cliffs and stuff. But
yeah, they're always hunting woolly mammoths in the Far Side comics.
Yeah, and I'm like, what? I don't think it happened like that. Like you don't, on the plains of Africa, they don't go and hunt elephants every day. Like, yeah, this is what we eat. No, it's you're mostly gathering.
Yeah, it's funny to want... I mean, that's silly. I don't need to imagine nature shows I've seen, but it just like even the predators we think of as big and scary are reluctant to prey upon a giraffe, for instance. You know, it's like growing up, you don't think a giraffe is... Well, we've lionified the lion or lionized the lion.
Yeah.
And, but to see that, like, even they're thinking that same way, it's not worth the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they say, like a typical predator's 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10 hunts are a bust. They start a hunt. Wolves are like, I think 9 out of 10 is the average for the gray wolf. Like,
whether it's going to produce or not, whether you're actually going to come home with meat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's bleak.
Yeah, I'm sure there's real statistics behind this, but I haven't seen it. But zoologists say that the most successful land predator is the African wild dog, the painted wild dog. You know that one? They're itty bitty. They're like this little. They're not very big.
Small yapper type dog.
Small yapper, big ears, but they succeed in like 4 out of 10 hunts.
And that's
the most
off the charts.
Wow. That's the most. So they're more successful statistically per hunt than lions.
Well, were zoologists considering humans in the calculus?
No,
oh, okay.
No. I mean,
how do you think we did? I say we.
Oh God. I mean, it depends. It depends totally on context. Like, and even what is a hunt? Is a 10-year-old shooting a lizard with a bow and arrow a hunt?
Right. I mean, if you want to buff, if you want
a lady with a sling stone digging roots, knocking out a ground squirrel whenever it pops its head up with a sling, is that a hunt?
Did that happen?
Of course it did. Of course it did.
Boy, you'd have to be pretty clever with one of those.
I want to learn how.
Yeah, don't we all?
I've watched it and crap, and I want to make my own. We saw it in Bolivia, Josh. They would use the herdsman, the girl with the sling with the sheep and stuff.
That.
I do.
She had a sling?
Yeah, it was like one girl with like 200 sheep or goats or whatever it was on a hillside, and you heard the little whoop, and she would, if she wanted them to go right, she'd knock it on their left, the left of the herd, and she could steer them just with stones and a sling.
I don't remember that.
Well, that's pretty neat, but I think I could, left of an object or right of an object is a little different than a ground squirrel.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're doing it from day one,
yeah, I guess you probably can.
Yeah. And they were, I mean, they're a cool weapon of war. I mean, they mattered. Like you could clear the ramparts with them. People had to keep their head down.
Right.
They would make them out of lead in the Roman armies and stuff.
Yeah, I watched a video of someone. It was theorized that there's some place they found a lot of these artifacts, and they were trying to sort of imagine why they had a hole in them, whether it may have been to make a whistling sound or not. You know, so I don't think everyone agrees, but it's
right.
One of the ideas is that the whistling would be demoralizing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they would, and like there was one story. It was some dude. I think it was some sort of emperor or general or something. He's on his horse and he gets hit in the knee with a sling stone from a long way away by the enemy, and he's down. I mean, it's like,
was that the end, or was it just
it didn't kill him, but he was incapacitated. And so like those like Celtic hill fort, because it's a universal weapon, a 10-year-old can use it, you know. And so if you live in a society that has a lot of endemic warfare and stuff, those big Celtic forts, the Opidia that they have in Gaul and stuff, kind of big, it's basically a low peaked mountain, kind of a lump of a mountain with these concentric rings, and you just find piles and piles of sling stone.
Right.
There's no walls. It's just like various ditches. You know, like if you can walk up one of these things. But if you're in a village of 1,200 people and everybody's in the fields, and the watchman sets off the fire at the top of the Opidia because your neighbors are coming, everybody runs to this hill fort within a few hours. There are just...
Is this hill fort occupied, or is it just
it's
where
both,
you go in?
It's sort of half town, half... It's like an open, semi-defensible place. It's sort of a town. It's
not
also
a castle.
market. It's not a castle. No hard walls. But if you're advancing up this thing, and there's 1,200 people with piles and piles of sling stones, and even the 10-year-olds are just... It's like, you know, what are you going to... There's no cover.
It's going to be hard to...
It's going to be hard.
Take.
Yeah, go ahead and have your shield and try to march up, but you're just walking into a hail of sling stone. Continuous. Some of them are heated. They would heat them up.
Neat.
Yeah. Sling them down on people, and incredibly cheap, profoundly cheap, completely you could carry it anywhere, and your entire society, men, women, and children, have it and are armed
and can use it, or probably to varying degrees. I'm at anyway.
And the cost is nothing.
Well, you said
a piece of leather, string, and rocks.
Rocks. Do you run out of rocks? I mean, you were
that's
saying
why
some of them are lead.
That's why you cache them up at the top of the Opidia, and they find them. They're like, "Where's the cache of it?"
When were these sort of most, or this picture you've painted of the Opidia? What time are we thinking?
Yeah, that's basically Celtic France, Gaul. You know, so like it's not Stone Age, but this is this is Iron. This isn't even late Iron Age. What am I saying? This is high Iron Age. This is 500 BC, 400 BC. You know, like the Caesar's legions were bothered by sling stones from Celts. You know, from the Gauls.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there were Romans. There were some of Caesar's soldiers were killed. By
felled
sling stones.
Felled by.
I'm sure. Yeah. You get hit with that in the head.
When did people start casting lead?
Oh God, that's a good question. Copper is one of the very first. You're talking like 8,000 BC, 6,000 BC.
What?
Yeah.
What casting? So molten.
Not casting, but
mining
and smelting in like the Levant. There's some fairly rich. There's places that used to have fairly rich copper ore. Like literally, it's like blue-green rock, you know.
Oh, okay.
And they've found the archaeological sites where they're just basically underground forges, I guess, it's basically a pit. You fill it full of charcoal, and you dig like tubes with reeds sticking into it, and you put the copper ore in there and get all the charcoal going, and then you get like 10 men around it, blowing it to get the heat up.
Wow.
And then it'll melt it out. You can actually, and there'll be
be
some drops of copper in the bottom, and then slag and all that crap. And you make your slaves do it 10,000 times, and they would. There's these.
And then what do you get?
You get a lump of copper.
A lump.
Yeah. And then you heat it up and you beat it, I assume, and get the impurities out. And they would make these really elaborate, like twisted, individually made copper objects that are really neat to look at, that are probably prestige items that are exchanged between different groups of like, okay, you conquered us, here's our copper.
Interesting. Oh, man. It's
Same
so
human
funny.
relations.
it just made me think of, I mean,
They find caches of them around like the Dead Sea and stuff.
yeah, to think of it just as sort of a representation of all that time and sort of experimentation rather than like going straight to building a tool or an implement.
Well, a copper implement is not very useful.
Right. It just made me think of literally playing Minecraft, because you're like doing this thing for no reason except that it took some time to find, and I don't know. Like, well, this is a symbol of the hours I spent,
How is that any different from this?
You're right.
It's not, because they knew what they were doing. They had no idea what metal was except the metals they were familiar with. But there were smiths, there were miners, there were foremen. There was the guy who was like, I've been doing this all my life. I know where to dig for the copper, son. Don't tell me what we're doing. We're not inventing. We're not reinventing the wheel. That hasn't been invented yet.
What a strange time to be a smith.
Is it? It's not. Is it so different from us? We're sitting there freaking out about we need a better battery. We keep waiting for the Thomas Edison who's going to build a better battery. We have the same battery we had 100 years ago because they can't fucking do it. And it's probably not going to happen. You need to break into like quantum level stuff. Maybe that's going to happen in 150 years, but right now we're groping in the dark. We really are.
Sounds more fun than it is.
It's not so different. Okay, so it's called the Chalcolithic, which means the copper age. I think, don't quote me on that, but like Cyprus, the root word is copper.
Oh,
that island,
wow.
That's where the copper was.
Neat.
And then they were fucking around making this copper stuff, and then one day somebody screwed up and they added some tin, and wow, that's a hell of a lot harder, whatever this is. Oh, that's now bronze.
Bronze, okay.
Or there were mines that accidentally had some arsenic in it, and you can make bronze out of arsenic and copper. And so this copper, quote, that's like a proto-bronze, maybe they don't know about the arsenic yet as separate. It was a contaminant, but this area has better copper.
Right. It's funny to think, just these things that, like the knowledge at the time, like there were things invisible to them that had to be discovered by later understanding.
Yes.
Like organ builders sort of. Yeah. Oh, and don't quote me on this because I don't have the great history of it.
Ooh,
but late 20th century started sort of trying to go backwards. Trying to revive older building practices. And, they were, we got to make these lead pipes out of this particular alloy.
Right.
And then had to kind of discover the impurities in the original lead alloys that made them stiff enough to stand up for a while, antimony, bismuth, and copper in your mainly lead tin alloy.
Sure.
But it's like, because if you try and do it, maybe just with the lead and the tin, it doesn't work as well for some reason. But, when you're reading the documents of the people who are doing it, they don't necessarily mention the bismuth and the antimony and the copper.
They didn't necessarily know it was there.
They didn't know it was there necessarily. Right.
That's the difference between true understanding. If you really understand what it is and you have the theory correct, like what we have with molecular theory now, you can sit there and ride that theory and predict things that nobody even knows about yet.
Right.
And
if your model is robust enough.
If your model is robust enough, and that's a really good way to check it. And there's a lot of examples. Like the most obvious one is Mendeleev with the periodic table. He was like, no, I've got this. And he predicted like 3 elements that they didn't know yet. And he was exactly right.
Because he had cracked in a way.
Yeah, he had the theorem.
Had an understanding.
Yeah. And another one is the Chandrasekhar limit, which is basically the minimum size of a star that can be held apart by electron degeneracy pressure. Basically, the pressure that electrons have to keep regular matter of protons, neutrons, electrons. The electrons orbiting the nucleus have a pressure, right? Gravity can overcome it if it's strong enough, and then it will decay into a neutron star. But so in the 30s, just hear me out. So when they finally really worked out a good solid molecular theory for nuclear physics and all that, this is what the electron and what it is. Here's the proton, what it is. This mathematician in India took that theory, understood it, and that's his name, Chandrasekhar. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, and said, okay, according to this and according to what we know of stars, this is the limit. And he was exactly right.
Wow.
And he predicted basically a star that molecular theory predicted, and then astronomy confirmed
with
after
evidence.
the fact. Yeah.
Well, observation.
Observation.
So
And-
the theory,
right.
the model pointed to
Right.
the existence of, well, in the
Yeah.
same way that we're, again, in sort of modern
Right.
atomic physics, we have a model that predicts the existence of certain particles that have yet to be observed,
Yeah.
and so then we build a
Right.
Large Hadron Collider to
Right.
try and observe these theorized particles.
Right. And then there's the other form of knowledge we're talking about with the smelting and all that, like, oh, why is Damascus steel so good? Blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe it might have just been an impurity they didn't know about. If it has a name attached to it, oh, it had to come from this place. They didn't know, but they worked knowledge around it to get the result they wanted. And then you might have to wait 700 years before they say, oh, it was
To reverse engineer.
reverse engineering. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny, because you're reverse engineering something that wasn't really engineered to begin with.
Correct.
Yeah.
It evolved.
Right.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's everything they do now with nature. Like, that's what when they talk about genetic engineering, all they're doing is looking at what nature already evolved and, oh, nature made this protein and we stuck it somewhere else. That's it. There isn't a single, as far as I know, they don't sit there and look at,
We haven't invented any proteins yet.
you can randomize it and say what the fuck happens, but that's what nature does anyway. And you're wasting time doing that. Just look at what nature already built and then try to do something good for what you want for humanity right now. And it's always happening where they're like, oh, we knew about A and we knew about B, and what do you know? Nature made C out of both of those, A really good I mean, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but a really good example is
Heaven forbid.
Yeah. Bacteria rhodopsin, which is, we have a chemical in our eyes, in the lining of our eyes, the fovea, I guess, that's very light sensitive. It interacts with photons and basically works as a proton pump,
So
That's how you see. You have a molecule that sits there and interacts with photons.
Okay.
Like, I'm looking, and it's making my molecule in the back of my eye go bloop, 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 bloop. And depending on kind of how much it bloops, you get different colors.
Okay.
Okay. Well, if it interacts with photons and it can pump a proton across a membrane to make an electric potential that fires off a nerve.
Right.
Lo and behold,
it's all gradients, right?
yes. And they started looking at bacteria in the ocean and other single-celled organisms in the ocean. And they have a chemical that is almost identical structurally to the chemical in our eyes.
And functionally, does it?
Yes, it functions in the exact same way in a completely different context.
So is this one of those instances where we may have co-opted like another organism? And
I don't know that.
that
that's
happens
worth
sometimes,
looking into.
right? Isn't that
The DNA coding for that final shape should be the exact same way. It's like two different blueprints that give you the same exact functional machine at the, but they're not doing it to see. They're a single-celled organism. They're doing it to just, it's a cheaper, it's not photosynthesis, but it's harnessing the sun's energy to power itself. But it's much simpler than photosynthesis. These are single cells in the ocean so small they could fit inside our cells. They're like mitochondria size.
Right. This is something just recently.
They found it, like a few decades ago, but it's a very good example.
Is a particular species or a family of species?
It's just a big fucking orgy slurry of DNA when you get to the oceans. Everybody's swapping.
I always get confused.
Yeah. So you could probably study it for a lifetime, the bacteria rhodopsin. But if you look at if you looked at the one that...
Well, this is your favorite bacterium then, right?
Yeah, well, it's my favorite story about it.
Okay.
One rhodopsin in our eyes is there to fire nerve cells into our brain so that we can see the world. The exact same molecule in the exact same process is there to harvest energy for a little single-celled organism.
To bebop around the ocean.
It just gives it a gradient that it can use to power itself. It's just it's turning its own body into a battery. Pump the protons out. Now you have a gradient and you can work with that.
You can't pump. Oh wait, never mind. I thought you said photons. Like you can't pump photons anywhere.
That's correct. Yeah.
Wait, how do you pump protons?
with this bacteriorhodopsin.
Oh my gosh!
It
A
interacts.
single proton, isn't that just
A
hydrogen?
single photon. It's an hydrogen ion. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
hydrogen without an electron.
Mhm.
Is that?
Yeah. That's how you power
That's
your
why.
body.
Yeah, that's another thing I always get confused with. Right, because
It's
then people talk about radiation.
Yeah.
So like, there's so many different things to call a single
Yes.
proton, right? Because we can call it hydrogen,
You could
a
call
hydrogen ion.
it, if it's in
can't
an
we?
aqueous environment, sure, it's a
What's
hydrogen.
aqueous? What's this guy doing?
It depends on the context, yeah, but it's a proton. It's just a fucking proton.
Okay,
But it kind of depends on who's it next to, what's,
sure. Does it have any
Is it in outer
electron friends
space?
around?
Does it have electrons around it? Does it have more than one electron?
Is it going
around
somewhere?
it? Is there oxygen next to it or not?
Oh, jeez.
Context.
That's very relativist
Context,
of you.
sure.
Yeah. When is a proton not a proton? So you were talking about pressure associated with electrons orbiting a nucleus.
Oh, yeah, electron degeneracy pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. Which direction is the pressure going? Is this an outward pressure or an inward pressure you're talking about?
Outward. Yeah.
And so gravity is the inward pressure
Yes. Gravity is pulling it intensely hard, yes.
to the nucleus? Or is that
No.
No. Is there a strong or weak nuclear force that keeps the electron orbiting the nucleus?
No.
Okay, why does the electron orbit a nucleus of an atom?
It's basically stuck there because of the positive-negative charge.
Okay.
Attracting.
Polarity.
Yeah.
Is why it wants to hang out.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it get to the center? I forget.
Because it's because of the electron degeneracy pressure.
So there's outward pressure.
Yeah.
What
An electron
what's
is hard to
what's
pin
the
down.
basis of this outward pressure?
You can't think of it in terms of like a baseball whizzing around. I don't claim to
Right.
understand it,
You
but
know.
basically, oh fuck. I mean, an electron is not. You can't think of it. I mean, they're.
You can't pretend it's a thing.
Yeah, it's
It's
not.
not a thing.
Yeah, it's the reason why It's the reason why things are things, but in itself, it's not like that. So
Oy.
you can't. There's the Pauli exclusion principle as well. So basically, things with what net integer spin. Half integer spin. They're spinning at a certain amount. Cannot occupy the same fundamental state of space. No two of them can. And so, basically, they hit. It's like flexing on a trampoline. You press it down far enough, and now it cannot go any lower. It can't fit there. There's no space. And so that's another. You can't think of electron degeneracy pressure as if it was like a bunch of balls in a pit. But you run out of metaphors.
Yeah, right.
So,
well, I'm trying to collect them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to collect metaphors,
It's
I guess.
so okay.
Because I'm still stuck. I'll always still be stuck with Niels Bohr.
Yeah.
It's
which
hard
is
to,
unfortunate. Yeah.
And it's like, I can admit that I've heard that they shouldn't think of orbits, but probability clouds or whatever. Well, okay, you can hear that, but in my head, when I think of an atom, I'm still kind of in
a
Niels
solid
Bohr land.
object, yeah.
You
as
know,
if it
I've
was a
got
platonic
orbits.
solid.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So okay, but what he's talking about basically is the white dwarf star. So a regular sized star like our sun, mid size. There's an outward for it. This is not electron degeneracy pressure. This is actual heat and energy spewing out of the center where fusion is happening.
Okay.
Enormous quantities are counteracting the incredible gravity going in. Eventually,
The density of comes from mass.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Gravity is arguably a field emitted by matter. They have no independent existence. That's what Einstein said. Matter, energy, space, and time have no independent existence.
Right.
The matter itself is creating a gravitational field. It gathers more and more of itself. It would love to collapse down into a black hole, but it can't because of multiple different forces. So a big star, it eventually runs out of fusion fuel. So now that is not pushing out anymore.
Right.
Literally, it can't counteract the gravity.
There's nothing telling it to go out.
Yeah.
But we still have all this mass.
Tremendous amount of mass
in.
that says come in. And so it can collapse down depending on how it chewed through its nuclear fuel, all the way to iron usually. And then Now what happens?
That's a story I would like to get to
Yeah,
eventually.
the stellar
yeah.
evolution. Then then it can go nova. Basically, the core regions that are much richer now in things like carbon and iron and whatever else is in there.
And it's literal now because the fusion stopped happening.
The
it's
fusion,
literal
yeah,
carbon or iron.
yeah. All the iron on the earth came from a star at some point. It's literally that. That's where it comes from. But it's still very hot. It's still it's not like the fusion doesn't stop that suddenly. It's slowly, the fusion is slowly losing its energy return on investment. So hydrogen to helium releases a huge amount of energy. Helium to whatever the fuck, beryllium releases a little less.
So
all the way to
helium
iron
is like two protons getting smashed together
Yeah.
and then being a nucleus of two protons instead of two nucleuses of one proton.
Yeah.
But what do you need for that? A lot of
An
pressure.
incredible amount of pressure and heat for fusion.
Right.
That's why we're never going to get fusion on Earth. I mean, it's just a fucking pipe dream. They're so stupid. It goes all the way
Got
to
'em.
iron.
Roasted.
So the energy return on invested for a young star that's all hydrogen, say, very high. Now it's accumulating helium, beryllium, lithium, all these things, and the fusion is still releasing energy per fuse. Yeah. It goes down and down all the way to iron, and iron is the lowest point for regular fusion. After that, you have to spend more energy from the environment to make the heavier elements. It bottoms out at iron.
Then the energy, where's this energy coming from?
The energy is coming from the
mass?
two hydrogens combining, and that's when it overcomes that weak nuclear force, I assume. And when they fuse, they don't want one very strong, incredibly strong positive force, another incredibly strong positive force.
They don't want to
repelling profoundly,
Yeah.
but there's so much heat and so much pressure, it overcomes. And when the strong nuclear force then binds them together, this is way beyond my pay grade, but it would bind them together and release an incredible amount of energy when it did that.
Okay, so that that energy then gets
expelled to the environment.
So is that energy then used by another?
That's what contributes to all that heat.
Well, okay, so let's say this happens
pressure
once.
is there.
Say this happens once with
Yeah.
proton A and proton B,
Yeah.
or hydrogen A and hydrogen B.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and they turn into helium.
Helium, yeah.
Now we have got a bunch of energy released.
Yeah.
And so then does that further contribute to hydrogen C and hydrogen D being friends?
Yeah, because it's contribute.
So it's a positive feedback loop for a while, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and for a while you mean millions of years. And when I say it's environment, I mean something. The big core, the fusion area of a core is bigger than the planet Earth. The fusion is okay, I'm at the very center of a star, literally. This hydrogen is the one sitting there, and it's going to fuse. Well, it's releasing energy into the environment. You take a straight line from that hydrogen and look out towards the surface of the star. That's like 10,000 miles away.
Okay.
They're so fucking big.
Yeah.
So it's releasing heat into the environment. Let's say it releases a photon. That photon might take 100,000 years to make it to, quote, the surface of a star. It has to sit there and wiggle through this environment. Incredibly hot, incredibly dense. It's more dense than anything we have on Earth. You think a piece of metal is dense?
Why is the photon going that slowly?
Because it's banging into everything.
Oh, okay.
And everything's ionized. When you say hydrogen, there's no hydrogen.
Does gravity slow light down?
What?
Does gravity act upon photons? I can't remember.
Yeah, but it's like curving space.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
But it's not like a photon like swimming upstream trying to get out from the center, but the center's so dense that it's going not at its maximum speed.
If the center's dense, wouldn't it be getting pulled toward it because of the attraction of the
Right,
mass?
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like if
If
it gets
it gets
released
curved
from this
enough.
reaction and wants to shoot out, but then the
Yeah.
what was I just
What do you think a black hole is? It can't get out. There's something there in a black hole. It's not
There's
void.
A lot of something.
There's a whole lot of something, but no light can get out. You cannot look at it.
What's that something made of? Is it
Nobody
made of
knows.
anything, or is it just matter?
Oh,
is there
God,
some like matter that's just matter? Is that a thing?
I think it's. I shouldn't even say this, but
Is
like
it full of atoms or just full of subatomic particles?
I think if there was a really big black hole and you fell into it, it might be. We have no problem being inside of an infinitely expanding universe. Is it so hard to be inside an
Eyebrows.
infinitely
We got eyebrows over
contracting
here.
universe? Like, if you were in it, you'd be like, well, I can point to a straight line and literally go forever, whether you're in a black hole or whether you're in there's no edge. Once you're inside of a black hole, there's no edge. It's just that all the arrows point towards the center instead of here, all the arrows point out.
Whoa.
Whoa.
This sounds like some good, like, pseudo bullshit universe building for, like, a comic book character. Or
look,
you know, like, it's like
Goku
our
would go in
universe,
there to
except...
train.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Totally.
totally.
Time king.
But then he can't get out. Oh, what? But like,
you know how all our arrows point out? In that universe, all the arrows point in. But pretty much everything else is the same. Except that we walk on our heads.
Yeah. Look, they have mathematical descriptions of the opposite of a black hole. It's called a white hole, and it's an object of look, a black hole is an object of infinite density that's always contracting, that you can never, once you're in, you never get out. A white hole is an object of infinite density and energy that's always expanding, that you can never get into. And when they look at this, they're like, well, in our universe, we don't think there could be a white hole. You could see it, but you could approach it, but it would always get bigger and bigger.
White holes can only exist within black holes?
No. Black holes can only exist within white holes. So they say, like,
Well,
inside of our universe, you can't have a white hole, but the universe itself could be described as a white hole.
well, how can you describe our universe as having zero density?
Because we're on the other side of it. Infinite density. If you're outside the universe, it has infinite density because you're looking at it. But if you're inside of it, it's just like this. You have McDonald's and traffic.
Like this.
when you look out at the night sky, you're looking.
Be on the outside looking in.
It's a wave. You're looking at the other end of a wave going away from you. That's a white. But if it's approaching you, it's a white hole. But you can never get into it. It can never actually reach you.
Sounds like, I don't know. It reminded me of.
It'd be like that
things.
Interstellar
Something
movie where
Yogi
the
Berra
wave
said.
just keeps getting higher. Like you cannot crest the other side. I don't fucking get it. Of course I don't get
Remember
it.
when Yogi Berra said nobody goes there anymore?
Yeah.
It's too crowded.
Yeah.
Is it anything like that? Never mind.
I mean, yeah. So smelting copper.
Yeah. So what was it? We were at $8,000 BC.
Yeah. I
ish.
mean, yeah.
So was that our first metal?
Well, no. I mean, there was always like meteoric iron, and like lumps of like gold nuggets, nature made.
Okay.
But
what did people do with?
Yeah,
them?
copper. I would say was the first really deliberately smelted one. They were probably dinking around with other. I mean.
Well, I mean, if you had like meteoric iron, it's like, oh, this is harder than the other rock, so I can use it for smashing better. I would assume that would be your first use of metal.
But can you flint knap iron?
No, God no.
Right.
But like there was a meteor.
So in
up
my
in the
head,
Arctic.
like the first tools are flint knapped, and then later we have metal tools.
It does. It's not.
So like. Am I jumping?
Yeah,
far?
You're jumping too far. Like you look, the flint knapping and like modern human stone tools are extremely sophisticated. People talk about stone tools as whatever, but no, they knew what the fuck they were doing.
Sure,
very
intentional.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about with this meteoric iron?
Okay. Oh, here's this
smashing shells open.
Hear me out.
Look at his hand.
So in the Arctic, there was a big fat meteor on like Ellesmere Island or something, or Greenland. They all knew about it. It's an iron meteor, and they were with extreme labor, like using rocks to shape iron, chipping off pieces of it and forming like harpoon heads and stuff. And it was a big sacred thing. And then the Europeans said, ha ha ha, and they took it during the age of exploration. Like, way to go, guys! So
it was being used because it was harder than
and it was this goofy sacred thing. They were like, we don't know what the fuck this is,
right?
but it's a thing, and we've known about it forever.
Right.
You know, and there was one in like Australia too. If I recall,
sounds nice.
There was one in South Africa. I mean, yeah, South Africa. They know the local indigenous people know their area intimately. There's no like, oh, we didn't know. You know, what do you mean? There's a meteor. Like they had a name for it. This rock. So that was the case all over the place.
I think they called it Big Fat Meteor.
Yeah,
I think you got it on the first try.
And some of the indications are that maybe they knew it. They fell from the sky because it would have been passed down in legend, and then therefore it's coming from like the realm of the gods and crap. Sure. And so in the Bronze Age, so you're talking like 1600 BC, we're now in the historical era, written records era. Prestige items, the really prestigious items, wasn't gold, it wasn't bronze, it was meteoric iron. So like King Tut had a dagger in his tomb of meteoric iron. And I think they know where it came from, because you can track the isotopes and stuff. But holy crap, this came from the gods.
That makes sense.
Right.
Not just prestigious, not just, that's like
sacred,
but otherworldly.
Yeah.
Pretty easy to...
If trans-dimensional beings started appearing in our universe and giving Jeff Bezos shit, some weird singularity thing that our physics can't describe, it would be like that.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. You can't lose this.
I'd like to think they wouldn't give it to Jeff.
Right. But whatever other pharaonic.
Right.
So the big pyramids in Egypt were built without iron. They had copper tools, copper and even the earliest ones didn't even have much bronze. They dug that shit with rocks and copper and wood.
Dang.
Yeah. Using one type of stone that's slightly harder to carve another type of stone.
That sucks.
Sounds like it sucks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Polishing a boulder to look shiny on the outside of a pyramid. Using a piece of granite to polish a piece of limestone.
That's pretty good.
Holy God. Yeah.
Oh, I took too much off. We gotta get another block.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Whenever I think about survival scenario or whatever, like trapped on a desert island or plane crash or something, it's like, oh, I gotta figure out how to, make some kind of shelter or whatever. That's always, I think, as far as I get is like, oh, I'm smashing one rock, another rock. That's like as far as I get with tools.
Yeah.
I don't think I could even figure out how to tie the rock onto a stick.
No.
How would you make fiber? Like peeling bark off of a tree and then weaving it, and then it dries out and snaps by the next day. Oh,
yep.
Man.
Basically.
Sucks.
Utterly fucked.
Yep.
When we get off, I've got a YouTube channel for you.
Oh, yeah. I think I know the one you're
You know that
about.
guy?
Yeah.
Do you know if you turn subtitles on, that he's written text?
Oh.
It's completely silent. He doesn't talk. But if you turn the subtitles on, he's got descriptions of what he's doing.
He was the one with he was slinging, right? I saw one.
Probably.
That guy in Australia. Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was
weirdo
banging away with it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, might as well.
Yeah. I've seen him make some stone axes, though.
Sure.
Yeah. He'd do fine on the island.
Yeah.
Well, looks like it anyway. Better than I would.
I'd be like the pig just licking the lichen off of a rock. That's the only way I could survive. Licking shit. It was
pathetically like scooping through mud.
Oh, yeah.
Eating worms.
Scrape this moss off. I've got fingernails anyway.
Yeah, just chasing like a single shrimp around a tide pool, like falling and cutting myself to be. Oh, damn it!
Yeah.
The movie Castaway with You is like over in 10 minutes, and then
terrible.
he died.
You have died of gangrene.
The final 40 minutes is your body rotting like over time.
Ooh, that's an art film.
Yeah, there you go. And I mean, you cannot honor the dead without knowing about them. And there's no worse dishonor than being like, well, these people weren't sophisticated. Like, you can judge the Middle Ages and be like, yeah, they were crazy. But when it came to like fooling each other on an interpersonal level, they were just as sophisticated as us. And you have trade networks that are just huge from an extremely long time ago. You have lapis lazuli showing up in Greece in the year 1500 BC. Where did it come from? Afghanistan. where it still comes from. So there's Greek artifacts in Wales, like where the tin was from the same period. It's not like one boat went that whole distance, but it was hopping. You know like
that
trade networks of
You know that hymn?
middlemen.
Jerusalem. Ya da 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 da.
No.
Anyway, I don't remember the words, but it's something about there's some period in Jesus's life that's unaccounted for. There's a couple periods, and there's some like sort of very Eurocentric hymn about him maybe making it to the British Isles.
Oh, great.
And I think it's related to being a tin merchant or being on a tin merchant's boat or something. But
Sure.
it's like, did his feet walk on these green hills or whatever? A very sort of,
Sure,
the
yeah.
British love this one, if I
Oh,
remember
God.
right. Emerson,
They-
Lake and Palmer do a pretty good version of it. You got, ELP, Emerson Electric Organ?
No.
Never mind.
Sorry.
Sorry, tin in Wales is what
Oh
I'm talking
yeah,
about.
that Cornwall. I mean, it was a source of the tin. Tin was rarer than copper. They've been mining that shit since at least like 3000 BC.
Wow.
Like,
Boy, tinker's an old job.
yeah. Tin pot, put on a tin hat, tin can. Like
Ooh,
it's not.
look
It's
at
all
you.
aluminum now.
Yeah.
But it goes. The wording of it goes way back. Tin cup. When's the last time you've seen a tin cup? What? Might have a thin. I think it's galvanized. I think that's tin on the outside. I don't know. I don't really care.
Of what?
Galvanized steel. I think the coating
I thought
is.
you meant a cup.
Oh, the tin now is just like the thin outer shell. I think.
I would like to up my metallurgy chops someday, But I'd seen something that gave me the idea people weren't necessarily, when it comes to, well, actually, that was a question I was going to ask you, what ancient meant, but we can talk about that later. But when it comes to, like, items found through archaeological pursuits of brass or bronze,
Oh, sure.
I think I saw the term, like a museum using the term copper-based instead of saying brass or bronze.
Oh,
Does that make any sense?
yeah. I mean, there's multiple
Metallurgically,
alloys, yeah.
What's bronze? Copper and
Tin tends to be.
tin, but you were also saying copper and arsenic.
Okay.
So already bronze.
They call it arsenic bronze. Yeah.
Okay. So it's brass.
Brass is zinc and copper, I believe.
Zinc.
I think galvanization is zinc, actually.
Yeah, it is zinc.
So, but yeah, I mean, nowadays the library of metallurgy stuff. Just spend a day doing it. It's really the different applications of steel, and it's down to the point of recipes. Like this one is 3% of this other. This other one is a 6% if your temperature needs to go up. Your temperature application is another.
Right. There's a thing they call bell metal, I believe.
Yeah, that's
And it's, I think, a particular sort of bronze alloy, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken.
And a little bit of silver for the sweetness of the tone.
Right,
And
but
that's
you
where
could
cannons
call it-
came
you
from.
could call it bronze, I think.
Yeah,
But it's
some of them, yeah.
But there's silver in there, so it's...
Yeah.
I'm sure the symbol makers have
Yeah.
names for their specific alloys,
Absolutely they
too.
do. Yeah.
The zildjians and the...
Yeah. It's really, and that's what's so weird to me about the way we talk about technology, as if it was like, oh, we just need this one thing, and therefore the banality of it and turning it into a recipes is the standard of success. Now it's going to get staked out by intellectual property and companies and proprietary rights and different certified uses that you can then even put insurance policies on, So like with that, I don't want to get into that subject too much on this one, but with that molten salt reactor that I'm always blabbing about,
Yes, I
they're
was thinking about
constantly
that
talking
too.
about like, well, we don't know if Hastelloy has the qualification for nuclear stuff. And it's like nuclear applications. Okay, what's Hastelloy? It's a type of metal. Okay, what does that mean? It's a type of metal that they can use in nuclear reactors that can go up to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit without melting or
Before it's-
warping. Yeah. So you get the rules built around it and all this. And that's what they're struggling with, the regulation. The theory is solid and they've proven it and they're ready to fucking go.
You sound like a character in Doc Brown. The theory is solid.
It
All
is.
this regulation.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's the reason why it's slow. It's
Damn
hilarious.
feds.
Yeah.
Not that type of regulation, though. Not laws. Regulation, like keeping the thing at the rate you want or whatever, right?
It's
what
both.
You mean by
It's both.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's the reason the molten salt reactor it's stuck in a circular trap. They cannot get qualified because they don't have the type of reactor that the qualifications are made for. And so they go to the Nuclear Regulatory Agency and are like, we have this type of reactor we'd like to build. And he'd say, well, what's your safety rating for the uranium pellet? And they're like, we don't have
a
one.
uranium pellet, right?
And they go, oh, well, then we can't certify you. Well, make some laws to certify us, please, and we'll pass them. But
Right.
it's this.
Our
they're
uranium pellets are the safest around because they don't
They
exist.
don't exist. And then other things, look at the fracking boom. They're just like, yeah, we want to destroy all the water. And they're like, okay,
Okay, cool.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
Go for it.
go for it. It won't cause earthquakes. It won't make the tap water ignite. And they're just able to do it because they're in power, and that's what's cool about being in power. Whoever has the gold makes the rules, right?
Who says that?
Jafar.
Oh, geez.
Remember the
Full
golden rule?
disguise.
Oh, man.
And he grins his
Oh,
teeth.
Yeah.
man.
It's interesting how he's wearing disguised teeth.
Yeah.
It's a really
He got into it,
elaborate
dude.
outfit
Yeah.
that he did for that one.
Yeah, he was excited.
And like, why was he like Aladdin wouldn't know who he was? Like, oh, you're
No.
Jafar.
Probably not.
You're a beggar on the street. Like, wear some glasses.
maybe they're posters. Maybe he's sort of a celebrity. Maybe would have seen a painting
Yeah.
of him on the street.
Like Jafar did this.
Or like
This bridge.
next week, Thursday through Sunday, Jafar headlining
He throws a
the
parade.
man.
Hookah-torium.
Yeah.
The vizier doesn't make enough money, so he has to do like he has like a stand-up show that he has to do like
Oh my
Friday and
God.
Saturday.
With the
No, just like
with the
he
parrot.
enjoyed getting dressed up. That
Ah.
was for him.
Oh,
He
there you
doesn't
go.
need it. He gets to because he's got the money. It's like
He's
Paris,
just into
it's
it.
like Paris Hilton cutting an album. She's not good at music necessarily, but once you're rich and famous, you get to headline at the
Yeah.
Hookah-torium if you feel like it.
So like Jafar just really like slumming. Like, fuck yeah, I'll pick up an urchin and drop him in the desert. That ain't the first time I've done it. What could go wrong?
Man, you know what I was thinking about today was like if you were super rich, like you can do the things that they do now where you're like, oh, I'm going to shoot all my money into space or
Yeah,
whatever.
dude.
But you could also
Or
do
cocaine.
things like pay your favorite band to make an album or
Oh yeah, like
Like-
Skrelly.
Jesus.
yeah, that was an example.
Yeah.
Or you're like, oh, you know what video game I loved growing up was this one. I'm going to like start a video game studio and then hire all the developers.
Oh my
or
God.
like
Make a
the
sequel?
Yeah, the creative lead or whatever from
Yeah.
the one that I liked and
You
then
could.
let them go nuts and, if they make it
That's
cool.
good. That's good.
That would kick ass. I would
No,
love to
I like that idea.
Dude, if you had a shitload of money, that would rule.
That's
'Cause
how
I've-
that's
I've-
what Renaissance art was.
Oh, nice.
That's what it was.
Nice. I saw this thing and I liked it, so I'm gonna pay that guy a bunch of money to make another one.
Here's an infinite pile of money.
Oh.
Bring me all your artists.
All I could have.
And knock yourselves out. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Mm.
I guess, and that's what it still is, because patronage still exists for artists.
Yeah,
Really.
we don't really have the aesthetic though. Like, here's Jeff Bezos, his pet muralist.
I think because it's more,
culture's different.
it's more like free market.
Yeah,
Like they get popular for whatever reason, and then people want to buy from them. So it's
Yeah.
like a
yeah.
group of contributors rather than one person who
Yeah.
owns their style or whatever.
Maybe we should change that model because it was prestige too. The popes were showing off.
Yeah.
So like, okay, I'm bringing the best and brightest to my court.
There's this
Maybe it'll happen again. The melding of capital and creativity. Ooh.
Well, there's like examples kind of that. Like this dude, David Cho, is a visual artist.
I think I've heard that name.
He's very successful, but like he's like unfathomably rich now because Facebook hired him to do like some shit for their building or whatever, some art, and then he got paid in stock.
Ah!
And then and then he like held on to it and cashed out, and now he's like multi-millionaire, and he
for
just does whatever the fuck he wants now. Like
There you
his
go.
art is his own and he still has like an output, but like that's how like it kind of started that way. Like, oh, he's an established artist, and then we're super rich, so hey, come and do art for us as a really rich company,
Right.
and then he, I guess, is able to escape from it. As a result,
Nice.
but
Yeah.
That's the successful sellout, but then just actually have the means to make the art you want in the future. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a case to be made, quite honest. Like, art is...
He's trying to make a case for capitalism. Did you hear that?
Art is elite. It is elitist. You know, it's
yeah.
just like, is it an elitism that serves humanity or not? Does it edify humanity or not? But you can't... So... we love the story of every underdog. Like, oh, well, he was a genius and he came from the ground up and they noticed his talent and whatnot. But when we talk about Michelangelo and Leonardo, they're already famous in our minds. We don't hear about how they
came up.
Yeah, what was he doing when he was 15? Well, he was already in a studio. He was already apprenticing to somebody. So
yeah.
You don't hear about the ones who sucked. Oh, dang it.
Right.
You know, time has filtered out to the very best.
Right. That's always the funny thing about thinking about excellence or famous people.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, wow, it's so crazy that guy's that good at that. But then it's, well, sort of tautologically, I wouldn't be talking about him unless he were that.
Yeah.
It's the only reason I'm talking about him.
Yeah.
Because he's known for being that good at that thing.
Yeah. And they were pedagogical. It was like they trained young people how to paint.
Right.
So.
Oh, yeah. Really interesting. I've got this book on this particular, I don't know if it's sort of a pedagogical. Oof, that's a tough one. Sort of a method of teaching and also performance practice that's not very well known in Western music. It's called Partimento.
Oh.
Singular, Partimenti,
probably
if you were talking about a series of exercises. But it was sort of a way of notating something on paper, and then the practice of it was sort of impromptu compositions. So it's improvisatory practice, I think.
On paper.
Right. You would write certain things in what looks like standard musical notation, but it wouldn't be fully realized. You know, it might just be a bass figure or a melody or a texture here. And then these Partimento masters could just look at that and basically compose on the spot based on this sort of rough sketch.
Oh.
But anyway, it's a Neapolitan sort of specialty.
As in Naples? Oh.
Yeah. And they had this sort of series of conservatories. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, just the tradition of those conservatories is really interesting to read about. Like you were, you know, this sort of institutionalized apprenticeship when it comes to painters. But these were schools. Huh. You know, if you were an orphan or you didn't have much prospects, you might enter one of these schools at a very young age and then learn a craft. In this case, the craft of eventually being a professional musician, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
And then when the conservatories, the ones that ended up with, you know, high reputations of, you know, then well-off folks would send their kids to study and pay tuition. But it's kind of funny. It starts with the downtrodden and people with nowhere else to go. So it's like, well, got to make them productive members of society. We'll make them badass musicians over the next 12 years.
Chain them to a piano.
Right, yeah.
Play, motherfucker.
Yeah, it was I mean, to
it could be,
to read this history, it was, you know, just like a lot of praying. And when you weren't praying, you were studying counterpoint and your instrument. Or, you know, but definitely a lot of praying, too.
Sure.
When you weren't in class, you were at church.
Yeah. Well, and
you got like a half an hour of free time a day.
Yeah. God. The scale of, I mean, before recorded media, it had to be in your head, you know, like it was either written down or it was in your head. So like, I think a lot of us would be, if we went back to times like that, you'd find somebody who we'd be very embarrassed at their skill of memorization
Hmm.
and the libraries they had in their head. That
Right.
us mushy-brained moderns are like, well, I could just look. I don't have to memorize anything.
Right.
True.
Anybody
you know?
got any books around? I
Yeah.
mean, well, there's
You know.
there's one a few blocks away, but we could just sing some songs we know if you want it.
Yeah. There's a quote. We were talking about the smelting and all that. There's a quote in one of Josh's Dune books about it goes all the way back to smelting and whatnot in the modern context. But yeah, it's funny. Like it's really, I don't know. I don't know if like you could say, well, they talk about like the modern mind is distinct from the medieval mind. Like especially Protestants are like, well, the modern human mind, like your own personal moral relationship with God and yourself, independent of the office of the keys of Peter, right? You know, no longer is the church bureaucracy the thing that actually gets you into heaven or not. No, it's about you as an individual person
Right.
and divine grace.
It's kind of anti-bureaucratic. Right?
Yeah,
We're cutting out some middlemen.
Yeah, you don't need a priest can no longer keep you out of heaven.
Right.
Excommunicate me all you want, but God died for my sins. You
Right.
know, He doesn't need you anymore. And that's the Protestant Reformation is when modern, ness happened. Well, it like the modern. How different is the modern? And by modern, I no longer mean like that Protestant, like pre-industrial Enlightenment era type thing, but like modern technological humanity, like we want heaven here and now. We want that really good life here and now. And it blows my mind how very bad we are about thinking about technology outside of the stereotypes and these really well-trodden paths that our ancestors did. Here, people complain bitterly about digital technology all the fucking time. You hear it every goddamn day about people on their phones, and it's like, well, didn't we make them? Isn't this what you wanted?
Right.
So
This is what was being sold to us, right? And we
Yeah.
all said yes, please.
we all said yes, please, and there was the
No
thing
way, awesome, yes, please. Yeah.
This makes me miserable and distracted at driving. It's like, then go back to the 90s. Like, nothing's stopping you except for this unassailable, invincible faith you have that this is what we must keep doing. And when they get really good glasses that'll sit there and you can learn how to bloop your eyes to scroll through it, they're going to complain bitterly about that. It's just a pair of glasses that you wear that has a screen on it, and the microphone can pick up your voice without having to have something in front of your mouth. Back in the aughts, back in the 10s, it was better. Like, if you want heaven to be here on earth, if it's really not about the next life, if you can't sit there and pray about your sins 10 hours a day and really think you're up to something, like, God, we have got to find a better way to think about technology.
Unfortunately, the driving impetus, it tends toward satisfaction and these things that are very kind of stupid, because that's like,
Toys.
oh, what gets people engaged? Like what makes them want to keep scrolling? What makes you want to keep the app open or check
Yeah.
the app more often? Because, that's unfortunate.
That's success.
Yeah, it's financial success, because the more you open the app, the more you scroll, the more you want to open the app, the more money they get, because more you see the ads.
Yeah.
So the driving force for development of technologies is that bottom line. And it's not,
Addictive.
and it's not in any way designed to be an improving thing or an educational thing.
Edifying.
Or edifying in any way,
No.
because that's not like where the money is. And it's unfortunate, because it's the potential for all those things is absolutely there. But that's not when you're scrolling, you're like satisfying something else.
Yes.
And that's
The-
easy to exploit. It's so easy.
Profound,
And like
yeah.
they're all coding for that, and like researching and testing on that.
How is it any
Right.
different from nickel
So-
keno when you sit there and just are, in Vegas, blah, 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 banging your fingers on that screen, putting in your quarters and nickels?
Yeah.
Which use some of the same
Same techniques?
cousins of, I'm sure kind of code-wise, design-wise, sort of similar algorithms.
don't know.
baked into the systems. You know, I mean
I think so.
I would like those machines are engineered to
Addict the human eye.
pay out at certain points. You know, or you get your little player's card. You get comped at these very like statistically modeled times and situations to perfectly keep you know, it's all delicately sculpted so that you'll be there for longest. And I imagine it's sort of the same sort of
I think so.
manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean when it gets sophisticated enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like, I think I think we should embrace the technology even more. Like the idea that it used to be better. Fuck that. Like we know so much more and the access is so much greater. Like profoundly. I would never want to go back to the 90s where it's like, wow, I have to check out the book at the library. Yeah, okay. I get to read the news. I get to read the headlines in Australia or New Zealand today. Like far better. So, but all it is an enhancement. You see somebody playing Candy Crush or something, and it's like, Jesus Christ. I understand you want to take a mental break for a while,
Right?
But you're addicted.
It's frustrating too, though, because like
I'm addicted.
The tools we've honed that make those things effective. You know, the penny slot machine or the app that. You know, that incentivizes coming back to it more and more. Or, you know, like you were saying, sort of these pressures that push towards this particular way to use the technology instead of something edifying or educational. It's like the tools that we have now to make those things more effective, to make it more profitable for the developer or whatever. Because the more scrolling,
more profitable for the shareholder.
Oh, for the shareholder.
That's who's being satisfied. Because a developer can be interested in something edifying and want to build something good,
right?
But that's not what is wanted by the company, because it's like, oh well, that's great, but we're not going down that road because the money is here.
Right.
Yeah, dude. The problem is capitalism, and it's the same story with the news. You know, like I was listening to some interview. There's guys who do like a media criticism podcast did an episode about these people, and then one of those guys was like, "Well, you have to think about." He came on their show and was like, "You can criticize MSNBC for not covering Yemen when they should." But guess what? People don't want to watch that, and so that's not where the money is. So that's not what gets covered, and like. That like it's always a bottom line,
right? It's so if you say, well, that's dumb, then what you're really talking about is capitalism, like
really,
well, it's too bad that that's the case. Well,
yeah, it's too bad that you can make money doing the thing that is bad. Like if you have the good thing, but then you're like, oh well,
nobody.
The way to use the good thing to make money is to use it in a bad way. So that's what we're going to do, because the tools are fucking amazing. The internet and like the applications that people develop on the internet are so cool. And it's like a new one comes out and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I could sit here for hours. And then they realize that and they're like, well, perfect. Come on in. And then
that's what I was sort of, not that it's a very profound point, but that's sort of what I was trying to get to earlier. It's like these tools that are being used in this very largely ungratifying way, you know, just to get clicks or scrolls, are the same like sort of modern tools we have, you know, like big time data analysis and you know, algorithmic feedback that is sensitive to our behavior and our behavioral tendencies. These are tools that could be used for those things you guys were talking about. Like, it could be educational or, you know, useful in all these ways. But instead, where we're pointing that arrow or where we're using these tools is just for, we got to get people. We figured out that the ideal ad per content ratio is this.
Absolutely.
Right? When that same great understanding of data and design and
Could be
the way
used.
most of us interact with this sort of technology. Yeah, it could be leveraged to actually make something cool.
Yeah, it's kind of the eternal fight. I think you can break it down even to the level of yourself as an individual. I could be more disciplined. I could do things that I know are more that would be more edifying for myself. I could listen to my betters and elders, people like Siddhartha, or just go with it, but why don't I? Well, I don't want to, and I've certainly gotten into self-indulgence spirals many, many times. So I see it more. You get rid of capitalism, you're not going to get rid of that aspect.
No.
Capitalism is the current iteration,
Yeah, but I think that
I would love to see this group of people.
positive activity has its reward, though.
Yes, it does.
Like, it feels so good to work with somebody or a group of people on a project and like feel yourself accomplishing it, like
Yes.
problem solving together and then accomplishing. That's not a feeling you can get.
The field of gold.
I don't know what that means.
It's the expression. That's my personal expression for that feeling.
Ah. Your personal expression.
Right. You wouldn't get the reference. It only exists in my head.
It's from Naushka, actually.
Oh.
Ooh, your favorite piece of
Yeah. And
literature
that one shall come
ever.
to you dressed in raiment of blue, descending on a field of gold. That's the feeling when you're a part of a community and part of something better.
Yeah.
There's
So
no substitute.
yeah, I
What are
think
you
there's a
talking
lot
about,
of
Josh? Getting something done, collaborating, both at the same time. Like what?
yeah.
What? No, I mean, really, what's
Yeah.
the feeling you're describing?
Yeah, it's like
So-
discipline and hard work, which is like some psycho shit too, where you're like, oh, discipline is its own reward. Like
Right,
that's
right.
like, you
No.
can go nuts
Success
with that.
win. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like also true that it feels good to do something good, and it feels really good to work with others to create or refine or discover something that you couldn't do on your own. I don't know, just like at my stupid job where it's like, oh, we can't get this server to networking to stay up or whatever, and you're like, I can't do this alone. Can we all go down the hall to like the big screen and look at it together?
Get the squad together.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
Walking
like,
in slow
we gotta-
motion,
yeah.
the music starts.
We gotta flank this server rack.
Yeah, totally.
really
we gotta
cool.
pincer
You're-
move this.
Yeah, you're on a hunting trip.
Yeah,
With
it's
your
a
bros. You
it's
gotta
a
go
good
do
thing.
Ah,
That's good.
nice. I like that.
You want to make a lot of money, get all these rich fucking internet psychos, people like Tim, and be like, okay, we're gonna have a hunt, go on hunting trips.
Oh, I
in little things-
guarantee you somebody's
Oh,
already.
that's happening.
Yeah,
That's happening.
you know it has.
Yeah.
$10,000 a day to go out with 5 other guys and kill a deer with spears. They'd pay out the nose,
Yeah.
Ah,
and they'd talk about it and they'd blog about it and all
Yeah.
that shit.
yeah, but that sucks.
Yes, it does.
Say,
Terribly.
making them pay for.
Yeah, but they're not gonna get better. They're
Well,
all
that's-
there.
that's
I
what
know.
they're doing,
I
dude.
hear
that's
you,
like,
dude.
That's their like, oh, we all go to Burning Man now.
Yeah.
like they've already-
They're doing it.
They're fucking up like every like they're just eating
Absolutely.
their way into like the culture at
Right.
large.
It's
Anything that's cool or like ever was is being eaten into by these
Yeah.
Silicon Valley assholes with too
Yeah.
much money.
yes, I totally. But it's
Yeah. Remember when juice was cool and then they ruined it? Oh, sorry.
it's
That's
the
an old-
it's
that's
the
an old
dragon
one.
eating its own tail though. I think like authenticity is always getting eaten by and always growing away from this devouring worm. Like
yeah.
I remember hunting trips with my dad. I don't even want to tell people about them. They're so precious to me. Because I went out hunting with my father and we shot and got a deer together, right? And then I'm reading about Kublai Khan, and it's like he went hunting with his grandpa, Genghis, and they got an antelope, and he smeared blood on their middle finger. Him and Munke, I think. Munke ruled the world. Kublai only had China, and that really reverberates. He's hunting with his grandpa. They got an antelope. They were little kids. They were like 10 years old. That's authenticity. That's what I mean when I say the fields of gold. And then there's bit dipshits. Oh, I've been privileged all my life. I don't know who I am. I need to pay for these experiences. It's like, pay all you want. Pay every fucking dime you have.
But I mean,
You can't fill a bucket with a hole in it.
I mean, the scorn is appropriate, but
Yes, I
also
know, pity.
we have to just. What else is there for a person like that or any of
Nothing.
us, you know,
Not any
where
of it,
we're
you know.
we're missing something, and so yeah, the scorn is appropriate, but also, I mean, like you said, I mean, can't help but feel sorry for those folks
Yeah.
because what can they do but try and find this thing?
They're a
and they're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, they're a hungry ghost.
But
They can eat all they want.
Yeah,
you know?
that's right.
And it's just the funniest fucking. I'm going to the Amazon to do ayahuasca. I'm like,
Right.
You know what? Stay there for 40 years. Learn who your neighbors are. Go gut an animal.
Yeah, either either 40 years there or figure out a different way.
Yeah.
From your, on your stoop.
Yep.
Yep.
It's either everywhere or nowhere. kinda.
Yeah, you'd be better off just trying to figure it out on your stoop.
You follow these travel blogs of people like, oh, we went to Istanbul this week, and they took some selfies, and you're like, you should have stayed at home. They're the same
It's
person,
nice.
whether they're in Istanbul or not.
Yeah,
you know,
wherever you go.
wherever you go. I'm gonna try to find that quote. Sorry.
Duh.
We are not looking at a new state of matter, but at a newly recognized relationship between consciousness and matter, which provides a more penetrating insight into the workings of prescience. The oracle shapes a projected inner universe to produce new external probabilities out of forces that are not understood. There is no need to understand these forces before using them to shape the physical universe. Ancient metalworkers had no need to understand the molecular and submolecular complexities of their steel, bronze, copper, gold, and tin. They invented mystical powers to describe the unknown while they continued to operate their forges and wield their hammers. Aww.
Do it again, but read the whole thing into the mic
I
instead of
fuck
just
it up?
like every seventh
God
word.
damn it. Okay.